To track expenses in Ruddr, just click on the Expenses main navbar option. This will take you to the default expense report screen. The expense report screen shows all of your expense reports. You can filter this list by year using this drop-down at the top left of the screen. If you have administrative rights to the expense reports of other members within the workspace, you'll see this Teammates drop-down at the top right. From here, you can click on any teammate and view their expense reports as well. To get to the detail of any expense report, we can either click on the expense report, or in the menu on the right here, we can select View. Note that we can also select Edit, Clone, or Delete if none of the expense items on the expense report are currently locked. To create a new expense report, we just click this New Expense Report button at the bottom right of the screen. This will open up the New Report drawer. From here, we type in the name of our expense report. We give the expense report a date, and then optionally, we can put in notes about this report. Once we've got this information entered, we click Save and Close. Now we're on a blank expense report. We can see the title of the expense report here at the top left of the screen, and we can see the expense report number. To add our first expense item to this expense report, we just click the New Expense Item button here in the center of the screen or at the bottom right of the screen. This button will bring up the New Item drawer. The New Item drawer is where we'll fill out all of the information about this particular expense. For example, let's assume that we've got airfare that we need to bill back to a client. We'll choose airfare as the expense category, type in the vendor name, select the date, put in the amount. We'll choose the project, whether or not the expense is reimbursable, whether or not the expense is billable to the client, and then any notes. Once these fields are filled out, we'll want to upload any receipt that we have related to this expense. We can do that from this Receipts tab. Once that's done, we've got our expense item ready to go, and we just click the Save and Close button. Now we can see that on our expense report, we've got a single expense item. The icons here on the right next to the dollar amount tell us that we've got a receipt uploaded, that this expense is billable to the client, and it's not reimbursable to us. Depending on the type of expense category that you select, you might have different fields that you need to fill out. For example, if we choose Client Prospect Meal, you'll notice that there's now an Attendees section of this new expense item form. Each workspace has control over whether or not an expense category will require attendees. Another type of expense category is the unit category. For example, if we choose mileage, we can see that the form is different. Now we're asked to enter the number of miles and the cost per mile. We wouldn't have to type in a vendor, but we would select a date. Again, we would select a project if the expense was associated with a project. Then we can put in our notes and click on Save and Close. We can see that a unit expense item shows the number of units, in this case 110 miles, the price per unit, in this case 57.5 cents per mile, and then the total, in this case $63.25. Once we have all of our expense items entered for our expense report, we're ready to submit the expenses for approval. To do that, We just click this Submit for Approval button at the bottom right of the screen. The individual expenses will then go through approval workflow. The approval workflow for each expense will depend on the configuration set for that project. For example, expenses may be automatically approved on a project, or they may need to go through one or more approvers. We'll click this Submit for Approval button, and we can see that both of our expenses have gone to this yellow color, which tells us that they're pending approval. So we know that the project associated with these expenses is set up for manual expense approval. And that covers the basics of expense reporting within Ruddr.